Hello, and welcome to Bubblespeech, a podcast about comic history through the lens of particular characters. I am one of your hosts, Lyric Hartwell.
And I'm your other host, Margot Kix.
So, to kick things off, I thought that we would go through the history of one of my favorite characters, Batgirl. I have been a fan of DC Comics for most of my life, and as I understand it, Margot, you are not.
No, I didn't grow up really reading many comics. I read a lot of Spider-Man when I was like a tween, and then I sort of got into like Marvel comics, but I'm very not knowledgeable when it comes to DC. I know like I've read like Watchmen when I was older and all of that, but about DC history, I'm very much not a specialist.
Yeah, I'm not particularly a specialist either. It's just my, area of interest. So, because of that, not a specialist thing and getting into comics more lately, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of look back at some of the history of DC Comics up to a certain point. I'm not particularly interested in going all the way back to the Golden Age, at least not yet. And I thought a fun way to do that would be, reading through all the appearances of my personal favorite superhero, Batgirl. What do you, as a baseline, what do you know of Batgirl, Margot?
She's like if Batman was a girl. Okay, now seriousness, I do like growing up. I knew of Batgirl because I didn't read the DC comics, but I did grow up watching the DC animated shows from the 90s and the early 2000s. And so, I watched Batman the Animated Series, I watched the Justice League cartoon, and Batman Beyond, which was my favorite. And, Batgirl is there.
Yeah. So, probably the only, the Batgirl you're most familiar with is Barbara Gordon, which is true of me too, but, there was actually an original Batgirl that I see almost no one bring up. Not a particularly well-loved character. So I figure we should start there with the character that no one cares about.
Yes.
Bette Kane, introduced in Batman number 139 in 1961. As you can see here, Batman, Robin, and Batwoman meet Batgirl. Decided to go, obviously find a very legitimate copy of this issue and read through it. Especially what we see on the cover here of some sort of electrical trap. We actually open with the Blue Bowman, who appears to be wanting to turn Batman and Robin into candles.
I see. Something that archers and, bowmen are known for doing, I suppose.
Yeah. A thing I noticed right off the bat, I actually had noticed this in my own reading when I was reading the 1970s Sandman, is, there's a cover, obviously, and sort of these Silver Age covers will always tell a little snapshot of the story, and then you turn, and the first page is basically a second cover, where, again, it's just one panel, and it'll tell a snapshot of the story, and then you turn again, and that's when it actually starts. So, it actually starts with them meeting Commissioner Gordon. We all know and love Commissioner Gordon. He's the police commissioner. He's Batman's close personal friend, and apparently he used to look like J. Jonah Jameson.
I was about to say.
Yeah, I don't know if Gordon has looked like this since the Golden Age, but, we open here and it's that's J. Jonah Jameson.
He wants pictures of Batgirl.
He does. I want pictures of Batgirl. We have that in common. So, you see here he talks about the Signal Man has called in. I don't know who that is, and he's certainly not the Blue Bowman, but we get a little flashback on him to find out that the Signal Man was apparently so DC keeps doing this. He's like a villain who just tells Batman where he is. That's his gimmick, is he goes to a place and does a crime and then sets up a signal here I am, which is, it's just a villain who's bad at his job. Goes to prison.
That's a lot of villains.
That's a lot of villains. Goes to prison, meets Bullseye, a Green Arrow villain, who teaches him, like, hey, you know, they just exchange things. Signalman's like, I got caught by Batman. Bullseye's like, I got caught by Green Arrow. And Signalman's like, Green Arrow? Oh, the guy who uses the trick arrows? I know. I'll become the Blue Arrow. And Batman, not knowing Green Arrow, apparently, won't be able to handle my trick arrows. Obvious flaw in this plan. I'm pretty sure Batman does know Green Arrows. Like, the concept of an archer with trick arrows is not entirely foreign to him. But regardless...
But that's not the Green Arrow. That's the Blue Bowman.
It's the Blue Bowman. That's how it's different. Regardless, this seems to catch him off guard. And in the first encounter, Batman pretty handily loses, despite the fact that a boxing glove arrow, I suppose, is technically a trick arrow, but it's just like a worse arrow.
It's like, an arrow that doesn't kill Batman. It's
an arrow that doesn't kill... Like, imagine if this guy had just used a normal arrow and shot Batman in the head. Boom,
and
job
that's
done.
That's why they needed Batgirl to be introduced here, because Batman is dead.
So, Blue Bowman wins the first fight, you know, as it happens. Again, he's not left his Signalman days behind, so he just kind of signals them at the next crime scene, like, I'm here! The next crime scene being the Gotham Candle Factory, which, of course, high demand for candles in the shape of giant pumpkins.
I don't know, in October, maybe. This is a cool-ass place, is the thing.
This is like the size of 2 people. Also, what crime are they committing here? What are they stealing?
Candles, obviously.
I guess.
Like, no one is protecting the 2 people-size pumpkin candle.
Fighting starts, and Batman is, after being beaten the first time, Batman is always prepared. So he is able to fight the Blue Bowman's trick arrows with trick batarangs. So Blue Bowman sets out a cobweb net arrow. Batman throws a saw-toothed batarang to cut it in half.
I see.
Blue Bowman has incendiary arrows. Batman has a fire prevention batarang, which, much to my chagrin, is not a batarang that explodes into, like, fire hydrant foam. It's just kind of a normal batarang, and Batman says it's fire prevention, but it just kind of knocks the arrow out of it. It doesn't seem all that special, to be honest.
It's his stand from JoJo. He's like, aha, but my trick batarang stand can beat yours.
We're very in the, my shark repellent will help me phase of Batman just has whatever he needs. A thing that just came to mind here is batarangs as a concept are inherently really silly, and yet I'm pretty sure every Batman media has had them. Even the, like, really serious Nolan and Snyder ones that are like, we can't have Robin and Batgirl. They're too silly. But Batman throwing little bat-shaped boomerang things, that's in. The fucking Snyder movies even had him, like, he uses batarangs to brand criminals. So I guess they tried to make it edgy, but it's like, no matter how you spin it, Batman has little tiny metal bats that he throws at people. That is not scary.
That's the equivalent of, like, if they had the Blue Bowman in the new Snyder movie or whatever, and he did have the fucking boxing glove arrow, but it seriously damages someone's face permanently. They're trying to be edgy with something inherently silly, and that makes it more silly.
Batman gets a concussion back at the Batcave. It's like scene where Alfred's like doing MRI, be like, "Oh, you're concussed. You have to whatever." He's like, "No, I'm gonna push on. The Blue Bowman must be stopped before he explodes the Gotham Candle Factory."
Not the Gotham Candle Factory.
Anyway, Batman stops the Blue Bowman, arrests him, and this is fucking clickbait because Batgirl does not show up.
Oh, I see.
She's not here. We have a second story, though, maybe in the second one, The Island of 1,000 Traps. But before we get there, so advertisements in comics, this is always a thing.
Yes.
You get advertised. Nowadays, it's like fucking GameStop or like whatever DC. Like, you get advertisements for the Arrowverse shows. But, advertisements in comics. Way back in 1961, a thing that they not quite advertised, but they just... a salute to our American Indians.
Oh, yes.
Which I saw this, and for half a second I was like, this is going to be the most racist thing I've ever seen. But if you actually take the time to read this, it's like, a teacher and some school children. The school children are like, Indians are boring. They're just like bad guys in the Old West. And the school teacher is like, that's a racist idea, actually. Indians invented a lot of things. There are a lot of really famous actors who are Native American. They're part of the workforce. You should respect Native Americans.
Wow.
And the kids are like, wow, Native Americans are cool. I want to put on the Native American play, which is still like kind of not great, but at least they don't think it's boring.
Yo, the 1960s.
Anyway, on to the Island of 1,000 Traps. Batman has to track down some, I think white-collar criminal, not a supervillain, just some guy who's fled the country. They bring in Batman for this.
I mean, this is very, this is very old comics. That's something that you lose, in comics as, the decades go by, but, in the old comics, especially during the Golden and Silver Age, it was very common for Batman and Spider-Man and even Superman and whatnot to just have issues where they stop common guys.
Yeah. Well, so the gimmick here, Batman and Robin have got to get through some traps, and the first one they come up to is a tank that, again, has a pneumatic fist instead of a gun. So, two things. First point, this is just a less deadly tank. 2, that's not a trap. That's just like a mech. That's actually, it's not even a mech. It's just a tank.
What's the trap here? It's like, oh, you're gonna put your face inside this tank cannon and then gonna get punched. What's the trap here?
Kind of blowing through the Island of 1,000 Traps because, again, Batgirl does not show up here. Thankfully, third time's the charm. We get some Batgirl. And again, this kind of second cover thing, but I'm glad we have it because as we can see here, the self-inflating balloon should throw them off so she can lasso them with her bat rope, which doesn't work because as we can clearly see, they're looking at Batgirl and saying, it's Batgirl.
Yes. Okay, so for a little block of first impressions of Batgirl. Gotta say, don't hate her costume, which is weird because this is a Silver Age comic and this is a character that is derived from another character. So her costume should be hideous. Her costume and whatever that guy is dressed in, they should be of similar quality, I think. But I don't hate this. It has the complementary colors. I think that the mask is a little silly, but it's fine. And she is just wearing a dress though, which is it's just her dress. There's I'm gonna put this cape over here, and I'm Batgirl now.
Well, I think it's very funny that your first impression is you don't hate the costume because as I was reading this to prepare for this episode, I showed it to my boyfriend, and his first impression was her costume is hideous. I actually agree with you, though. I kind of like this costume. I think the colors are hideous, but I like the mask. So we've got a nice range of opinions here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But right off the get, we have Batman, Robin, and Batwoman trapped by something. A camera that is projecting a ring of electricity around them. So Batgirl has to, swoop in. And I love that, she swoops in on the window curtain, kicks the guy, and these 3 panels are all in succession. She swoops in, kicks, and then presumably on the same swing just leaves.
Look, That's the Dark Souls strat, you know. You hit and then you get away.
Yeah, she just immediately dips. You know, over the top narration, who is this Batgirl? But as we soon find out, Batgirl is Bette Kane, the niece to Kathy Kane, who is
Wait,
Batwoman.
that is not Barbara Gordon.
That's not Barbara Gordon. And Kathy Kane is not, if you know Batwoman... Actually, how much do you know about the modern Batwoman?
Oh, nothing. I found out that there was a Batwoman, as in, you know, Batgirl is Batman if a girl. Batwoman is Batgirl if grown up. I found out that there wasn't just like a one-off name for, I don't know, adult Barbara Gordon, like fairly recently.
Wow, really? So similarly to Barbara Gordon, there is a modern Batwoman. Her name is Kate Kane, and she is not Kathy Kane. They are very different characters.
Oh, I see.
But I think, like, later we can talk about the history behind those characters, but for now, Kathy Kane is Batwoman, and Betty is her niece. Betty comes to town to visit Kathy at her mansion that she lives in, and Kathy predicts this will be a problem, because Betty might find out that she is Batwoman. And sure enough, she does almost immediately. Betty sees on the news that Batwoman helps to stop some criminals at some obscure, weird factory, and sees on the news report that there's, like, these gold star sticker things that go everywhere, and later as she's brushing her hair notices gold star sticker things are falling out of the brush, so, my Aunt Kathy must be Batwoman, which is a very strange way to find out, but sure.
Sure.
After this, she decides to go out as Batgirl and confronts Kathy in her own personal, Batcave under her mansion. And Kathy's, put off by that, decides to go to Batman to ask for some advice. Batman advises, well, say that you're gonna let her be Batgirl, but she needs to do some training first. And then just keep training her and say she's never ready until it's time for her to go home. And you just won't have to deal with her. Which is such a mean plan.
That's a very mean plan. It also just at this point, it's the Silver Age. Superheroes don't have much of a personality, and a lot of the archetypes that we associate with them would only just be cemented a few decades later. Not decades, but a few years later, right? But it's interesting to see how Batman, even at this point, is the solution to not creating a child soldier is to create a child soldier, but never send it on a mission, I guess.
Exactly. We see Betty go through some training. She's very smart, she's athletic, she's acing all the training, but Batwoman still says, no, you're not ready. Until, obviously, Batgirl decides, I'm just gonna sneak out and do some detective work, find out where they are, and go join them.
Yeah.
And of course, she sees that they're fighting the Cobra crew or whatever, and decides that the plan we see from the cover, the self-inflating balloon, will startle them so she can lasso them with the bat rope. What is not put on the cover is that she takes these out of her crime compact.
Well, is it a compact where she keeps the crime?
Presumably, a belt is too, masculine for Batgirl, so she keeps her stuff in, a makeup compact case, which is not a lot of room, so she can't have much in there.
She can have the self-inflating balloon.
Of course. Through some research, I also found out that, rather than utility belt, Batwoman has a crime purse. So this is just, they decided that, they're women, so they need girly things.
Exactly. The question is, does Robin have a bat school backpack? A backpack, if you will.
I think he should. I think Robin should have a utility fanny pack.
Exactly.
When he graduates to utility belt. So she gets captured. The plan fails. Obviously, they're the Cobra crew. they are hardened criminals, not at all distracted by the self-inflating balloon. So she gets kidnapped, locked away in a room, and the Cobra crew come up with a plan of, now we have a hostage, we're going to force Batman to reveal his secret identity to us, and then he won't be able to stop us, because we can just blackmail him whenever we want. Batgirl is feeling quite, hard on herself. She's just made everything worse, but she comes up with a brilliant plan. They locked her up in, like, an office space, and so she takes some paper and cuts it into little paper bat shapes and sends it through a vent so that the paper bats get vented outside. So hopefully she can signal someone from off of the street who will help.
Okay, so there, not to, poke holes on the plans of a child, but, bats are not signifiers of Batman, usually. They're usually signifiers of bats. So if someone sees bats coming out of a vent, they'll just be like, damn, they should get rid of the bats in the vent,
I like that you're so trusting in her paper cutting skills as to think that they would look like actual bats and not just like, one, they're not gonna fly, they're just paper, they're just gonna fall out the vent onto the ground.
I guess it's just that I guess my brain was just like, that's some shit that the Silver Age would do. I will cut this paper in the shape of a bat, and then it will fly, and people will think it's an actual bat.
Regardless, plan works. So Batman and Batwoman and Robin all come beat up the Cobra crew, but she's in the situation. The main guy has got her hostage, has a gun to her head, and of course she gets out of it by pretending to faint. She just swoons and pretends to faint, and as she is fainting, knocks the gun out of his hand.
Wow. Great. I mean, that's good strategy.
And the crew have taken out the Cobra crew. She's proven that she's ready for this, and of course she goes over to Robin, who she hasn't interacted with throughout the issue at all, and asks him out on a date. And he's like, oh, blushing, because I feel like we should talk about why these characters were introduced. They were introduced to make sure that people knew that Batman and Robin are not gay. And normal people right now will be thinking, why would we think they're gay? They're like father and son.
Exactly.
But normal people does not include Mr. Frederick Wortham. Frederick Wortham was a psychologist who was convinced that comic books were the root of all evil. They needed to be destroyed. Most of this was he believed that presenting crime in any way would encourage children to go out and commit crime. He was worried about violence corrupting the youth, but also chief among his concerns was homosexuality. In his 1954 book, Seduction of the Innocent, quote, "Sometimes Batman ends up in bed injured, and a young Robin is shown sitting next to him. At home, they lead an idyllic life. They are Bruce Wayne and, there are scare quotes around this, Dick Grayson. Bruce Wayne described as a socialite, and the official relationship is that Dick is Bruce's ward. They live in sumptuous quarters, with beautiful flowers in large vases. Batman is sometimes shown in a dressing gown. It is like a wish dream of two homosexuals living together."
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so...
There are many things here.
Yes.
One, pointing out that, the nickname for Richard being Dick is silly is like the Lego Batman movie does that. That's a children, schoolyard thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially, if you ever seen those fucking Richard Nixon cans from around this time, actually. You see that, it was even sillier at the time. So...
Mm-hmm. Other things here, being a socialite is apparently fruity in Frederick's mind. Sumptuous quarters with beautiful flowers are just having nice surroundings. You can't, if your house is nice. Look, if you don't live in a fucking slop pig house man cave, there's something fruity going on.
Exactly.
And a dressing gown? It's too far. It's too far. Now, Wortham had some allies in very high places at the time, including the United States government.
Yo.
Senator Estes Kefauver invited Wortham to the Senate Subcommittee on Juvenile Delinquency. So there, he testified before the committee, making pleas to, ban comic books, because in his mind, the comic book industry was more dangerous for children than even Hitler ever was. That is a quote. Well, unfortunately, the subcommittee did have some lasting effects. The Comics Code Authority was formed, a self-governing body. They had a set of standards that, comics would be submitted to the authority. They would scan to make sure it was in line with their standards, and then they'd put a little stamp on the cover. And the thing being, most retailers would not stock your book if it didn't have the Comics Code Authority stamp. Give you some idea of the code. Crimes must never be presented in a sympathetic way. If crime is depicted, it must be unpleasant. Policemen, judges, government officials, and all respected institutes should never be presented in a way to create disrespect for authority, which is... Ooh, that covers a lot.
It's also very vague.
It's very vague. They can basically just say no if they don't want you to be there. Criminals are never glamorous. Good will always triumph over evil. Excessive violence shall be prohibited. Here, the next one very specifically affected DC and a lot of comics publishers at the time. There was a pretty healthy indie comics publishing scene before the authority that was basically killed by it. No comic magazine shall use the words horror or terror in its title. So, the horror genre was basically just outright banned.
Incredible.
No excessive bloodshed, depravity, lust, sadism, any unsavory illustrations shall be gone. If evil is brought up, then the comic needs to have, it needs to illustrate a moral issue. Things that you cannot, under any circumstances, have in comics at this time. The Walking Dead, torture, vampires or vampirism, ghouls, cannibalism, and werewolfism.
I would like to remind everyone that this started because a guy saw a man in a dressing gown and a guy named Richard, and he freaked the fuck out.
No profanity, no nudity, no suggestive illustrations. Females shall be drawn realistically, without exaggeration of any physical qualities. No sexual relations, no sexual perversion. Which, the aforementioned homosexuals. Now, for as, restrictive as the authority was, and it essentially changed the entire landscape of comics, it severely damaged indie comic publishers, it isn't quite what Frederick wanted. He was kind of hoping that just comics would go away, but the Comics Code Authority is what we got. And because DC, Seduction of the Innocent was very influential, DC was worried that Batman and Robin could be perceived as homosexuals, I guess. That's why we needed Batwoman and Batgirl, to basically show that they're not gay. Bette Kane being a wealthy socialite who decides to be Batwoman purely because she wants to get together with Batman. And as we can see at the end of this issue, Batgirl, asks Robin out on a date. Clearly not gay. Unfortunately, turns out introducing characters for, the purpose of, just because you want to cast aside assuasions that your characters might be gay, it's not a great sign for people being interested in writing those characters. And sure enough, between the years of 1961 and 1964, Bette Kane had a total of 7 appearances.
Damn, yeah, big break in the comic business.
Huge break. She was moderately popular, but just not a character that people want to use very much. Her last appearance in 1964 was in Detective Comics number 322, which, let me tell you, this one is a treat.
I'm so excited. Oh, the bizarre Batman genie. Yeah, it sure is, you know.
Great Scott, Batgirl! Batman is a prisoner of the Larco lamp! So,
okay.
Batman, how could things get worse? Batman's been captured by the Larco lamp. Entering here, Batman's called in by a museum curator. They find out that the Larco lamp, a, ancient Arabian lamp, has been stolen from the museum. According to legend, though, this lamp can, with a special powdered dust, this lamp can capture someone and turn them into a genie for 3 wishes. And Batman and Robin, they go out, they have to get the lamp back, mostly at this point believing because, it's an artifact. They're not sure about the legend, but Batman gets captured. There's actually an accident. They throw the dust at Batman, sees disappeared. It's like, oh gosh, we wasted the dust. Now we can't use someone as our genie. And only later realizing Batman is the genie.
Oh.
So of course, Batman under their control, they get 3 wishes. Each wish must be completed within an hour. So, first things first, Batman genie, pick up this giant bucket and plunder the Gotham Mint.
Okay, so I don't think. Look, this guy. I don't think these guys understand that Batman is a genie now. He can make whatever they want. They don't I think that they are just trolling Batman here. No, here's a giant bucket. Where did they get a giant bucket? Don't know. But it's you're gonna have to plunder all of the mint in Gotham City just one by one. And Batman does not want to do that. Look at his expression there.
He's so upset. Robin and Batgirl have to team up to stop this because Batwoman's out of town, I guess. Off to the Batcave, Robin's gotta grab his Bat Whirly gig, which is like a flying device that he pedals, like a very Jules Verne whimsical little flying device thing. And Batgirl's got to go get her Bat Scooter. Robin's gonna run interference while Batgirl carries out some plan at the Mint. Obviously, to run interference, Batman has to steal Batman Genie's turban to distract him.
Okay. Jinns are not even beings that grant wishes in Islam and pre-Islamic folklore. It's God damn it.
Well, as we know in comics, Batman Genie can't be without his turban. Why?
Because it covers his ears, where his power is stored.
Fight ensues. Batman Genie's got to get the turban back, but he eventually wins. He's very powerful as a genie, and he robs the Mint. But surprise, surprise, Batgirl, what she was doing on her Bat Scooter, she replaced all the money in the Gotham Mint with actual mint.
Oh, okay. So now I don't know if my previous statements were confusing, but I did think that was just what they wanted anyway.
No, mint is another term for bank.
Oh, okay. So, I thought that they were just we want all the mint in Gotham, Batman. We're gonna have a monopoly on the Gotham Mint.
No, you're on board with Batman, Genie. You would have been tricked by this. You would have seen a building called Gotham Mint, gone in, seen there's just a bunch of mint, and been like, yeah, this must be what they wanted.
No, exactly. No, that is what, a classical fable genie would grant a wish as. They're like, you need to plunder the Gotham Mint, and because he's a genie, he'll be like, okay, here's a bunch of mint from Gotham City, bitch.
So, at this point, I was thinking, like, okay, so we're setting up for, like, they waste the wishes because the criminals say a wish and then Batman and Robin Batgirl and Robin, trick Batman, Genie, and they, whatever. No, I guess they were running out of space or something. They just go and attack the criminals and steal the lamp.
I see. Very interesting.
Like, very just straightforward, and they just use up all the wishes to free Batman. I don't think we really get to see what they use the wishes on, necessarily. But they free Batman, the criminals get the lamp back and they try to summon Batman Genie. Puff of smoke, Batman shows up. They momentarily think, Batman Genie could do our wish, but secretly, he's free. So he punches them.
Okay. I mean, okay, hang on. Is there any explanation why he's big as a genie?
Genies are big.
I guess, but like when he showed up and he wasn't big anymore, didn't they realize there was something wrong?
Nope.
Oh. Okay.
And that's it. That's the whole story.
Wow, a great goodbye to DC's most lovely character, Batgirl the First.
You'll notice, that Batgirl is not a particularly important character in either story.
Yeah, but you know what? I think I figured it out. I think I know what Batgirl and Robin wish for in order to free Bat Genie. I think that they wish for a character with the same idea, but that has a lot more charisma, perhaps.
Perhaps. Regardless, after this, we would never see Batgirl or Batwoman again. Which for Batwoman is a shame. She just went out of town and never came back, I guess. Reason being, a man named Julius Schwartz became the editor of the Batman line of comics in 1964, and he had an idea to revitalize the Batman brand. He thought that Batman was too silly, and the way to fix that was to get rid of Batwoman, Batgirl, Ace the Bat Hound, Batmite, Vicky Vale, the reporter, and for a little bit, Alfred, which may have made a few too many cuts there, Julius, but it actually kind of worked. Afterwards, the Batman titles have kind of been floundering in the sort of Silver Age silliness for a while. Under Julius Schwartz, they kind of came back a bit. They got a bit more popularity to them, but eventually some things would be changed. Notably, Batgirl would be introduced under Julius Schwartz's run as editor. This was mostly done because William Dozier, the producer of the Batman TV series that was happening at this time, had an idea for a character named Batgirl, who would be Barbara Gordon, the daughter of the police commissioner. Now, isn't that spicy? They would introduce her in both the show and the comics in 1967, and while Batgirl and Batwoman were fairly popular, Barbara Gordon blew them both away in terms of popularity.
I mean, yeah, you can tell.
There were some holdover fans of the original characters, though. So in Detective Comics number 417 in 1971, an editor's note kind of addressed why Batgirl was still, the new Barbara Gordon Batgirl was around, but Kathy Kane and Bette Kane weren't going to be seen again for quite a while. Quote, Batwoman and Batgirl were there because romance seemed to be needed in Batman and Robin's life. But thanks to the big change and a foresighted editor, these hapless females are gone for good. In their place stands a girl who is a capable crime fighter, a far cry from Batwoman, who constantly had to be rescued by Batman. So, kind of throwing the Kane girls under the bus there. But, we've got rid of these hapless females, and we don't need to think of them anymore. we did eventually see the characters again. In the 1975 run of Teen Titans, Bette Kane was eventually reintroduced as the superhero Flamebird, and has enjoyed a fair level of popularity. Flamebird has been on a number of the Teen Titan rosters, but she's not really ever touched up against the Bat family as much.
I don't think she was in the cartoon either, probably.
No. Kathy Kane fared a little worse. In 1975, a Batman family comic was introduced, essentially for the Bat family, for just stories focusing more on the Bat family and not necessarily Batman. Due to people asking, Kathy and Betty were introduced in Batman Family issue number 10 in 1977, but after the end of Batman Family, Kathy Kane kind of faded away. She was brought up again by Grant Morrison during some of their comic book runs in the early 2000s, but Grant Morrison's the type of writer who never lets anything get forgotten. For people who are maybe more into just like the DC movies, you'll note that James Gunn, who did the Suicide Squad, introduced characters like Polka Dot Man and Bloodsport, a lot of really minor characters brought to the fore, and now with his new Gods and Monsters plan for the DC Universe, he's mentioned that he's taking a lot of inspiration from Grant Morrison comics. There's a reason for that. There's a lot of overlap in their philosophy of using every toy in the toy box, everything that's ever been introduced. More notably, Kathy Kane would return as a fairly minor character in Grayson, the series by DC during the New 52 era. Nightwing eventually transitioned into Grayson, where Dick Grayson became a spy and left behind the Nightwing persona for a little bit. And Kathy Kane was there. Not as Batwoman, and she hasn't appeared since Grayson, but, you know, some writers still remember Kathy Kane. And in that vein, I thought it might be nice to look at Kathy Kane and Bette Kane, Batwoman and Batgirl, the first Batwoman and Batgirl, see how they laid the groundwork for what would come next.
Yes.
Which, next time, we're going to see the character who this podcast is actually about, Barbara Gordon. And she was introduced in two very different times. The very campy, very silly 1960s Batman TV show, and under the watch of Julius Schwartz's Batman comics, which were trying to go for a slightly more serious tone. So, next time we'll see how that works out.
And we'll see you next time when it's done. You can find me at ChthoniKix, that is CHTHONIKIX. I made a very hard to spell handle, but I used to have it just be my name. Then I got banned from Twitter. I am on both Twitter and Tumblr. I post art. Follow me there.
You can find me at Lyric Hartwell on social media. Looking forward until the next episode. Hopefully, we'll be better at outros.